private hells. Kyrie eleison. All you hungry and ignored, who thirst for something more, Kyrie eleison. You who feel so lost but are afraid of being found, you who are in chains but are afraid to live unbound, Kyrie eleison. Kyrie eleison. For all us lovely needy people living in this world, spinning round and round and round and round, round and round and round. For all us lovely broken people living in this world, spinning round and round and round and round, round and round and round. Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy. Kyrie eleison, Kyrie eleison. Oh, you children ripped and torn, battered, bruised and worn, Kyrie eleison. All who look hate in the face, locked in hate's embrace, Kyrie eleison. You've given up and can't see anywhere but down. You've lost all hope and think it's nowhere to be found, Kyrie eleison. Kyrie eleison. For all us lovely needy people living in this world, spinning round and round and round and round, round and round and round. For all us lovely broken people living in this world, spinning round and round and round and round, round and round and round. Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy. Kyrie eleison, Kyrie eleison. There is mercy enough, there is grace enough, there is love enough for all of us. There is mercy enough, there is grace enough, there is love enough for all of us. There is mercy enough, there is grace enough, there is love enough for all of us. There is mercy enough, there is grace enough, there is love enough for all of us. There is mercy enough, there is grace enough,
Hey, well, good morning, Life Church. How you doing out there? Good to see you today. And I hope you enjoyed that opening song there called Lovely Needy People by a group called The Many. And they use this phrase in that song, Kyrie eleison, which you probably heard it just a few times there. That's an ancient prayer, an ancient declaration of faith from the Greek language, which means Lord, have mercy, or Christ, have mercy. Well, it's good to see you today, and once again, welcome to Life Church. I'm Jason. If we've never met before, I'm so glad that you are hanging out with us here today. This is just a great Sunday to be together. We are approaching the 1 year mark of the pandemic, and just it's so important for us to continue to stay engaged. And so if you're watching out there, I want to encourage you to take a minute, say hello on the YouTube stream there, log in, write some comments there, say hello to each other, say some jokes to each other, or share what you had for breakfast, or tell us how much you like the latest snowfall outside or something. Just engage out there. But also, while you're doing that, I want to encourage you to open up your app, your phone, your Life Church app on your phone, and fill out the online or the digital connection card. If you don't have our Life Church app, I'm not sure what you're waiting for, but it's a great way to stay connected during this season, during this time. You can find it on any app store, Life Church Lancaster, or just search Life Church Lancaster, download that app, and you can stay connected. A lot of different things in there, but also is that digital connection card. So let us know you're engaging with us today. This is super helpful to us to know who's out there and for us to stay connected with you. Life Church, ultimately, we're here to help connect people in a meaningful way to the person of Jesus. We believe that Jesus is a unique and profound character in the course of human history, someone who taught us what God is like, someone who showed us what God is like better than anybody else who's ever lived. And so we try to do everything we can to help create to help facilitate you having a meaningful connection with Jesus. And so we hope that happens today. So wherever you're at on your spiritual journey, whether you got questions, you got doubts, you're struggling, or whether you're kind of checking this thing out, checking Christianity out, trying to learn, or whether you're here because you just feel down and depressed today and you just felt like you needed a pick-me-up of some sort, we're glad you're here, and we hope that today is helpful and encouraging to you in your walk with Jesus. So today is Super Bowl Sunday. How about that? We're excited for the Super Bowl today. Hopefully you're excited for the Super Bowl today. For those of you who are Chiefs fans out there, I know we have some in our church. You can thank an Eagles fan for I can't even think of it. I'm totally blanking. For your coach, I've totally spazzed. Anyway, I can see his face. Can't think of it. Our old coach, we gave him to you. Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed the Super Bowl today. That's not embarrassing at all. But anyway, I hope you enjoy the Super Bowl today. But as we're thinking about this, one of the things I wanted to let everybody know about is our plans for reopening. We're going to be reopening. So on March 7th here at Life Church, we're going to begin to reopen once again. So if you were with us back in November, we attempted to reopen back in November, and then as everything spiked, we shut back down again. So March 7th is going to be our first Sunday reopening in the same way that we did back in November. So we'll be encouraging face masks. We'll be requiring face masks. We will social distance everybody. We'll be limiting the amount of people who can be in the room. And then also, we will not be providing Kids City just yet. So if you want to engage with us, if you feel comfortable and ready to kind of see some people face to face, March 7th is going to be the date where we're going to reopen. So we're really excited to see that. And that date is actually almost a full year. It was actually the first Sunday of March last year. That was our final Sunday before we shut down. For the pandemic. So we're looking forward to seeing you and looking forward to slowly working a reopening plan. So finally, this morning, as we're settling in and getting together here today, I know that as we've been a year now in this pandemic, the weight of this is just it's weighing on all of us, right? It's winter, it's February, it's snow, it's cold. It's supposed to be even colder this week. And this is in any year. A lot of times this can be a tough season, and this year this can be exceptionally tough. And so, the next couple of songs or videos that we're going to play here this morning, just kind of have that in mind. So if you're kind of feeling a little down with the pandemic, you're feeling a little discouraged about where things are at, I'm hopeful that these next couple of songs here in our feed this morning will be helpful and encouraging to you. So let's continue to worship and kind of grow together.
Praise be the nurses and doctors, every medical staff bent over flesh to offer care, for lives saved and lives lost, for showing up either way. Praise for the farmers tilling soil, planting seeds so food can grow, an act of hope if ever there was. Praise be the janitors and garbage collectors, the grocery store clerks and the truck drivers barreling through long, quiet nights. Give thanks for bus drivers, delivery persons, postal workers, and all those keeping an eye on water, gas, and electricity. Blessings on our leaders making hard choices for the common good, offering words of assurance. Celebrate the scientists working away to understand the thing that plagues us, to find an antidote, and all the medicine makers. Praise be the journalists keeping us informed. Praise be the teachers, finding new ways to educate children from afar, and blessings on parents holding it together for them. Blessed are the elderly and those with weakened immune systems, all those who worry for their health. Praise for those who stay at home to protect them. Blessed are the domestic violence victims on lockdown with abusers, the homeless and refugees. Praise for the artists and poets, the singers and storytellers, all those who nourish with words and sound and color. Blessed are the ministers and therapists of every kind, bringing words of comfort. Blessed are the ones whose jobs are lost, who have no savings, who feel fear of the unknown gnawing. Blessed are those in grief, especially who mourn alone. Blessed are those who have passed into the great night. Praise for police and firefighters, paramedics, and all who work to keep us safe. Praise for all the workers and caregivers of every kind. Praise for the sound of notifications, messages from friends reaching across the distance. Give thanks for laughter and kindness. Praise be our four-footed companions with no forethought or anxiety, responding only in love. Praise for the seas and rivers, forests and stones who teach us to endure. Give thanks for your ancestors, for the wars and plagues they endured and survived. Their resilience is in your bones, your blood. Blessed is the water that flows over our hands and the soap that helps keep them clean each time a baptism. Praise every moment of stillness and silence so new voices can be heard. Praise the chants and slowness. Praise be the birds who continue to sing the sky awake each day. Praise for the primrose poking yellow petals from dark earth. Blessed is the air clearing overhead so one day we can breathe deeply again. And when this has passed, may we say that love spread more quickly than any virus ever could. May we say this was not just an ending, but also a place to begin.
has come and taken our loved ones. It leaves our home so lonely and tree. Then do we wonder why others prosper, living so wicked year after year? Father alone will know all about it. Father alone will understand why. Cheer up, my brother, live in the sunshine. We'll understand it all by and by. Faithful till death, said our loving Master. A few more days to labor and wait. Toils of the road will then seem as nothing as we sweep through the beautiful gates. Father alone will know all about it. Father alone will understand why. Cheer up, my brother, live in the sunshine. We'll understand it all by and by. We'll understand it all by and by. We'll understand it all by and by.
All right. Well, welcome back. Again, this is Jason. This is Life Church. Hopefully, you enjoyed a couple of those songs there this morning. And it's Andy Reid. I know. I've known that. It just, on this side of the camera, sometimes your brain just blanks. So anyway, good to have you with us today on this fine Super Bowl Sunday. So today we are starting a new teaching series today, but it's kind of season 2 of a 2-part teaching series, right? So we just did season 1. We completed season 1 called The Unmanageable Life, and now today we start season 2 called The Restored Life, and this is two teaching series or 2 seasons of the same episode or the same show with the idea of we're following the 12 steps. The 12 steps that the recovery movement uses on a path of spiritual transformation. So these 12 steps are steps that work for those who are in the hardest, most difficult circumstances, facing addictions, facing life and death situations, really, and they absolutely need a spiritual transformation in order to overcome the struggles that they are facing. And these steps work for them because they are true, because they work for all people ultimately, because these are steps of spiritual transformation. And ultimately, we all need to be on a journey or a path of spiritual transformation. And so what I've been encouraging us to do through this whole teaching series so far is to journey on these steps. Let's journey on these steps together. So we talked in the first series, in season 1, we talked about steps 1 through 5. And in this new teaching series, The Restored Life, or you could call this season 2, we'll be working through steps 6 through 12 to the end of the 12-step journey. And so we're glad that you are joining with us this morning as we step into this new teaching series. So my family has a little four-legged friend. We call her Charlotte. She is a Wheaten Terrier. She's a fantastic little doggy, a fantastic part of our family. And if you know anything about Wheaten Terriers, one of the things that's true about this specific breed is that they're high-energy dogs. They're very, very friendly and social. And they're the kind of dog that you never go outside with them without them being on a leash or within a fenced-in area, because they love to run, they love to explore, they love people, and they will just explore the world the moment they're off that leash. And so when we first got Charlotte, we kind of had this journey of learning to teach her how to stick around, teach her to follow instructions, all the stuff you do with dogs. But we had a fenced-in backyard, and so it's been great. We can just let her run around back there. But every now and again, she might escape that, or she might run out through the front door and get outside, or she actually learned to jump the fence. This is like a 4-foot tall fence, but had some wood stacked in the one corner, and when she would see people out there, she just would go berserk, and she figured out that if she climbed up the wood pile, she could jump over the fence. And so it took us a little while until we figured out how she was getting out. But what did happen through this journey is I became more adept at chasing her. Right? As your dog is running through the neighborhood, not paying attention to cars, crossing streets, going into other neighbors' yards, and mauling, in a positive way, the neighborhood, your neighbors, greeting them. So I got better and better at learning how to chase her down. And one thing that I learned is the more I chased her, the more she ran. Right? I don't know if you've ever tried to do this with the dog, right? They're out there, you call them, and you start to use your firm voice, right? Come now, Charlotte, come now, and you start to get that stronger, more and more firm, because if you sound more and more angry, that means you're more and more serious, and that they will obey you, right? I'm not sure why we do that. It doesn't really work. And so, but every time you'd take a step towards her, she would turn and run. And every now and again, she'd let you get a little bit closer to her. Maybe you're 10 yards or 20 yards from her, and you take a step, and then she'd be off again, and you're just playing this circus, looking like a fool running through your neighborhood after your dog. But one day, I decided to try a new approach. And what I did was, once I got as close as I thought I could, she was there, she's 20, 30 yards away from me, and instead of taking steps towards her, I decided to turn away from her and start to walk the opposite direction while calling her, and then also kneeling down. Something magical happened in that moment. I turned, I started walking, I knelt down, I called her, she just came running right up to me, so happy to see me. I grabbed her collar and very gently and kindly took her back into the house and placed her in a safe place in the home. It's counterintuitive, right? I learned in order to catch her, I had to stop chasing her. It's counterintuitive, and that is the place where we find ourselves with step 6 and step 7 of the spiritual journey of the 12 steps on this path of transformation. So let me tell you, let's quickly read steps 6 and step 7. Step 6 says this: we're entirely ready to have God remove all of these defects of character. Now, remember, step 4 and 5 were all about doing a moral inventory, so writing down all of the defects that you have, all the things you've done wrong, and then sharing that with God, with yourself, and with another person. We talked about that last week. If that sounds exciting to you, you can go back and listen to that message. But that was step 4 and 5, and so step 6 now says we're entirely ready to have God remove all of these defects of character. And step 7 says this: humbly ask God to remove our shortcomings. Now, the obvious question when you're reading these is this: am I supposed to do something about all these shortcomings? This massive list of things that I might have written down in steps 4 and 5 and talked to somebody about, am I supposed to do something about them? Or is God supposed to do something about them? Should I create a plan and get working on them? Should I start to apply my effort and create lists and notes and start just forcing myself, get an accountability, do all these kinds of things in order to get myself to stop doing these things? Or is that God's job to change me? And the answer is, yeah, sorta, kinda. Right? This is a paradox of spiritual transformation. It's kind of like chasing my dog, right? The more I chased her, the more she ran. But if I was just going to sit in my house and watch TV while I knew the dog was out roaming the neighborhood, that probably wouldn't work so well either. I had to get out of my house. I had to go out onto the street, but then I had to turn around and wait. So yeah, there are things that we do to create a context where we are ready for the spiritual change to take place. But no, ultimately we can't make that change ourselves. We can't make that happen. We need God to engage in this process. And we must humbly ask God to step in and do what only God can do. So steps 6 and 7, I'm sorry, I skipped something. Richard Rohr says this. He says this, we must fully own and admit that we have defects of character, but then equally step back and do nothing about it, as it were, until we are entirely ready to let God do the job. That's in his book, Breathing Underwater, The Spirituality of the 12 Steps, which I highly encourage you to be reading along with us on this journey. And so steps 6 and 7 are about reaching that moment in your life when you are truly ready for God to act on your behalf, humbly asking him to do so and waiting for God to do it. It's a threshold moment. It's a crucible moment. It's a season, often, of waiting. Now, step 6 says this. It says, as it begins, it opens with these words, we're entirely ready. Entirely ready. And that's something really good to ponder for a minute. Entirely ready for God to remove these shortcomings. I want to ask you, are you ready for God to remove your deficiencies of character or shortcomings, your sins, your dysfunctions? This question seems innocent enough, but it's really quite powerful. For most of us, if we really asked ourselves this question and we're totally honest with ourselves, we might find out that we're not actually sure that we want our shortcomings to be removed, right? It's like kind of, oh Lord, please make me holy, but just not yet. There's still some sinning I'd like to do, right? Well, for most of us, you can say, well, why is that? For most of us, our shortcomings, our struggles, our failures, our dysfunctions, they serve us in one way or another. They do something for us that we like, which is why we continue to do them. Now, another spiritual writer who's written a book on the spirituality of the 12 steps, A.M. Weber, he makes this comment. He says, many of these defects are deep character traits on which we've depended for survival. To release them means more than letting go of just a defect. It means letting go of a way of life. Well, that's something to think about right there. Maybe you struggle with anger. Maybe at the beginning when we said, I'm powerless over fill in the blank, you said it was anger. Well, why do you have that struggle with anger? Well, it's likely because anger's doing something for you that you want, that you like, that you're happy about. It feels good, right? It's protecting you. Your anger is protecting you. Your anger is keeping your heart from being hurt again. Or at least you think it is, right? But what we begin to become aware of is, that anger's also hurting me in certain ways. And it's hurting the relationships in my life. Are you really ready for God to remove it from you? Do you struggle with avoiding conflict? Right? You're that passive, aggressive type, right? You avoid conflict at all costs, even when you should be engaging in some healthy dialogue with people. Well, why do you do that? Do you understand why? well, you know that your tendency to passively avoid conflict, it's serving you in some ways, right? But it's also hurting you. No one knows what you really think because you never say it if you think it's gonna offend somebody or lead to some kind of conflict. As a result, you feel alone. You feel unknown. Maybe you struggle with envy. That's what you put in the blank. You're powerless over your envy. Do you really want God to take it away? Really? It's doing something for you that you like, that you want. That's why we do it, right? When you feel envious of someone else's good looks or someone else's income level or someone else's social media platform, their fame or their house or their family vacation or their happy life, it allows me to feel bad for myself. And it allows me to justify my hatred for somebody else, my dislike for somebody else. And the envy serving me somewhat in one way or another. Am I really ready? Do I really want God to remove it? Because it's kind of like a little pet of mine right now. Whatever your struggle is, lying, judging, a prescription drug addiction, an affair, boasting, bragging, lust, bitterness, a shopping addiction, or even rooting for the Dallas Cowboys. Whatever your struggle is, it's doing something for you that you want it to do. It's working for you in some way, right? The problem is it's also hurting you, and it's hurting the loved ones around you, and it's stealing from you in other ways. And in another way, and forgive me for another Lord of the Rings, illustration, but we're all a little bit like Gollum, right? Remember Gollum, my precious. The ring is my precious, right? We're all a little like Gollum with the ring of power. We love the ring. It's so precious. It serves us in certain ways. It makes us invisible. It makes us feel powerful. It does amazing things for us, and yet it's also killing us. Step 6 invites us to ask a deep question. Am I ready? It starts out with this: we're entirely ready. And actually, this is a statement of reality. I'm ready, right? Once you embrace step 6, you're saying, I'm ready. And steps 1 through 5 were the process of getting us to this point of being ready. Step 6 is not about trying to be ready ultimately. Step 6 is saying, I'm finally ready. I'm entirely ready for God to remove these shortcomings. It's about recognizing our need for change and actually being willing to do something about it. Those are two different things. You can recognize your need for change, and then the willingness to do something about it is a whole nother thing, right? I recognize my need for exercise and getting fit. I'm just not ready to do anything about it right now, right? Many of you may find yourself in that place. Let's just be honest with ourselves, right? Step 6 is pushing us to be honest and ask this question. And this is why so many people don't experience a deep level of transformation, because they've never been entirely ready for those shortcomings to be removed. Now, someone might ask, well, how can we become entirely ready? How do we get there? And again, A.M. Weber in his book, The Steps of Transformation, says this. He says, step 6 cannot happen if we try to make it happen. It can only happen when we allow it to happen. I know that's an unsatisfying answer. It can only take place after a nascent spirituality has been fostered in the preceding steps. In other words, he's saying, you've got to walk through steps 1 through 5. And if you get to 6 and you're just still not ready, you got to go back and keep walking through steps 1 through 5. Like, that's the way we get here. And I can tell you, what starts us on this journey, what starts so many addicts on the 12-step journey, those who struggle with all kinds of addictions, whatever they may be, what I can tell you is what starts them on that journey is often pain, right? That's why the first start, my life has become unmanageable. I'm powerless. This is a painful, awful situation I find myself in. So I'm willing to take some extreme measures to get out of this hole I find myself in. And for many of us, if you're not, overtly struggling with some kind of powerful addiction in your life, like alcohol or drugs or sex or pain medication or something like that, a lot of times we're not driven to the place of pain that's going to push us on this journey to get us to accept these truths. But it's often, and I don't like this reality, but it's often the pain in life that moves us, the pain of our troubles, the pain that comes from our shortcomings, that moves us on a path of spiritual transformation. And we see a lot of this. I'm going to reference the Psalms a bit today as we talk about this. We see a lot of this in the Psalms. Psalm chapter 69 says this. The psalmist writes, "Save me, O God, for the floodwaters are up to my neck. Deeper and deeper I sink into the mire. I can't find a foothold. I'm in deep water, and the flood overwhelms me." Have you ever felt like that? Have you been at that place in your life? He goes on to say, "I'm exhausted from crying for help. My throat is parched. My eyes are swollen with weeping, waiting for my God to help me." The psalmist is pressed into such an intense situation, a desperate situation of pain and anguish, that his only avenue left is to simply cry out to God and to wait for help. He's waiting for God to act. He's waiting for God to save his life. This is there's a deep desperation in his voice when you read this. And that desperation, if we're honest, most of us don't feel that. Right? We're not feeling that desperate until we do a little bit of that internal work, until we ask ourselves some harder questions. But this is the hidden blessing of struggles. They create in us a much deeper desire for God than we ever knew before. This is where the one struggling with a life-altering addiction has an advantage over those who don't. Right? Sometimes it's the ones who work through a life-altering addiction that come out with such a deep a level of connection with God and transformation and spirituality that those of us who haven't walked through those valleys, we just don't understand. For many of us, our shortcomings are not driving us to our knees in the way they might for someone who's struggling with an addiction. And as a result, we're often not ready to let go of them. And so we miss out on the spiritual transformation that is available to us. But step 6 says we're entirely ready. We can't force it. We can't fake it. And if you're not entirely ready, then circling back to the previous steps is what's recommended. But when you are ready, step 7 takes us to the next place. When step 7 says this, humbly ask God to remove our shortcomings. It's a simple little step. Once we realize we're ready for God to remove, now it's time to ask, to humbly ask God to remove the shortcomings. Psalm 40 says this. The psalmist says, "I waited patiently for the Lord to help me, and he turned to me and he heard my cry. He lifted me out of the pit of despair, out of the mud and the mire. He set my feet on solid ground and steadied me as I walked along." See, we've been doing everything we can to get our lives on the right track. And now step 7 says, lay down your efforts. It's time to humbly ask for help. And for many of us, we've tried everything to deal with this thing in our life, and nothing has worked. And so it should become clear to us at this point, this is the moment where we need to give up trying and allow God to step in. But asking means waiting, right? You can ask God to step in. But sometimes between the ask and the arrival of help, there's a waiting period. And asking always leads to some kind of waiting. And waiting is not fun. Waiting is not great. As Americans, really, we don't like to wait for anything. Waiting in the Chick-fil-A drive-thru for 15 minutes while they move 437 other cars through. It's a Herculean feat. It's an amazing reality of the modern world that Chick-fil-A can move so many cars through their drive-thru so quickly. And yet, if I'm in that line for more than 10 minutes, I'm my goodness, we need more Chick-fil-A's in this town, right? That's where our brain goes because we don't like to wait. Waiting is hard, especially when it comes down to like, I'm supposed to be fixing my problems and becoming a better human, becoming a better person. Waiting feels lazy. Waiting feels irresponsible. Waiting feels passive. Waiting seems ineffective. Asking God, and then I'm going to sit back and wait. Yet we see story and story after scripture of people waiting for God to act. Another psalm says this, Psalm 37:7 says, "Be still in the presence of the Lord and patiently wait for him to act." Be still and wait. It's not the American thing to do. Yet spiritual teachers will tell us that waiting is not just a passive activity. It's not a void where nothing is accomplished, that it's filled with activity. It's filled with growth. It's filled with so much important stuff. It's filled with the presence of God. And yet, we're struggling to sense it. We're struggling to feel him, to be aware of it. And ultimately, waiting is filled with transformation. Just think of the butterfly. Remember? The little slimy caterpillar weaves its cocoon, and there it waits. And God does something in the mysterious chamber of that cocoon, and when the time is up, out comes the butterfly. Or think about the acorn. It's all about waiting. Everything happens in the waiting. Take this little nut, put it in the ground, and you wait. And all of a sudden, amazing things start to happen. Jesus talked about it when he talked about the grain of wheat that has to fall into the earth and die. And then you wait. But once it has died, it grows and sprouts and produces a crop, 20, 60, 100-fold. So steps 6 and 7 are telling us, when you're finally ready to be truly rid of the defects, of the shortcomings, ask and wait. Ask and wait. Because here's kind of a bottom line thought for us today, and that's this, that something that can only happen when we're waiting happens when you wait. So you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Right, it's a simple little statement. Something that only happens, it can only happen when we're waiting, happens when we wait. It's running out onto the street, chasing down the little doggie and seeing her and deciding, I can't chase. I got to stop. I got to turn around and wait. It's counterintuitive. It's risky. It takes faith and patience. Pastor and author Brian Zahn, in talking about waiting, this is what he said. He says, waiting for God to act only seems like waiting for God to act only seems like waiting for God to act. It only seems like it. God is always acting because God is always loving the world and always giving birth to something. Waiting for God to act is actually waiting for your soul to become quiet enough and contemplative enough to discern what God is doing in the obscure and forgotten corners, far from the corridors of power or wherever you think the action is. Step 7 is inviting us into something that we would call being contemplative, and into contemplative prayer, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a few weeks. It's inviting us to be still and wait and find God in the waiting, in those quiet moments, and patiently wait for him to act. So as we wrap this up today, I want to ask you, are you entirely ready for God to remove the shortcomings? If so, awesome. Move to step 7. If not, why not? Have you thought through that, whatever it is you filled in the blank with earlier in this series? Have you asked yourself the question, what is this doing for me? There's a reason I like this. What is it doing for me? And I encourage you to go back and begin to work through those first steps again. Think through those steps again. What will it take for you to get to the point where you feel entirely ready for God to remove the shortcomings? And then the second thing to think about here is, will you humbly ask and wait? Right, that's step 7. Ask. We've humbly asked God to remove. And so to accomplish this, I want to give you a practical step to do this week for those of you who feel like step 7 is where you're at. I want to encourage you to take 5 minutes 3 times this week to ask and wait. And this is a little step towards what we would call contemplative prayer, right? Which I am not an expert on. There's many who can speak much more educatedly about this. But learning to ask and just be quiet. Take 5 minutes to state your case before God. A simple prayer, something that goes like, Lord, I'm ready for you to take this, fill in the blank, away from me. Will you please remove it from my life? And sit in silence. Sit in silence and wait. And one of the tips, and this is something I've been doing recently, that first song from this morning where they repeated that phrase, Kyrie eleison, which means Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy. I encourage you, if while you're sitting in the silence, waiting for God, in those moments, as you're sitting there and your brain is going, you're thinking about your to-do list, you're thinking about, the laundry, or you're thinking about something at work, or you're thinking about the kids, or you got all kinds of things that run into your mind. In order to kind of keep your thoughts under control, and Mindy's taught us about this before, but you can just kind of breathe in and breathe out and focus on your breathing. And when you do that, you can do the Kyrie eleison prayer, which is just basically breathe in and say, Lord have mercy, breathe out, Christ have mercy. Just kind of whisper that under your breath as you breathe and as you sit in silence and wait. So my encouragement for you is 3 times this week. Maybe you could do it you can do it more than this. You can do it for 10 minutes. You can do it for a half an hour. You can do it every day, 3 times a day. I'm saying at a minimum, try to 3 times this week. Take 5 minutes where you say this, Lord, I'm ready for you to take this away from me. Will you please remove it from my life? And then sit in silence with God and pray the Kyrie eleison prayer if you need to. Lord, take this addiction from my life. Take this hatred from my life. Take this bitterness, this anger, this resentment, whatever it is. What if you let God do what only God can do for you? What if you simply decided that you were going to plant your flag here and, like the psalmist, patiently wait for God to act? What if you experienced a breakthrough? What if that struggle that it's been with you for so long was finally over? What if the month, the years, or even the decades spent in that suffocating cocoon were finally over and you could step into a transformed and new life? What if this was true not only for you, but for dozens of others in our church community? What might happen in our community if we were a group of people who were willing to ask God and wait? How might this community change? What might God accomplish in the world through us? Something that can only happen when we wait. Happens when we wait. So together, let's ask God for transformation and wait until he does. Let's pray. Jesus, thanks so much for these few minutes this morning as we think about these things. We all have struggles. We all have difficulties. So Lord, help us to come to terms with these things and help us move us to this point where we're leaning on you, where we're reaching out to you and asking you for help, asking you to do what only you can do in our spiritual lives, in this path of spiritual transformation. Thank you for these few minutes, and it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
it now. And we see the light coming fast, coming fast. We see the light coming fast. And we feel the hope come at last, come at last. We feel the hope come at last. So wait for it, wait for it, wait for it, wait for it, wait for it now. And wait for it, wait for it, wait for it, wait for it, wait for it now. And we find our truth on the path, on the path. We find our truth on the path. And we're free from the chains of our past, of our past. We're free to move on from the past. So wait for it, wait for it, wait for it, wait for it, wait for it now. And praise for it, praise for it, praise for it, praise for it, praise for it now. And we see the light coming fast, coming fast. We see the light coming fast. And we feel the hope come at last, come at last. We feel the hope come at last.
Well, Life Church, good to see you today. I'm so glad that you took some time to hang out with us this morning, and I hope this message was helpful to you. If you have any questions about it, I'd be happy to interact with you. Shoot me an email or ask a question through the digital connection card, which I hope by now you've taken a minute to fill out, but if you haven't, you have still time to do that. Open up the app and let us know you're watching along with us today through the digital connection card. And so be safe out there today. If you happen to be driving around out there at all today, a little more snow is flying. Enjoy the Super Bowl as the Chiefs hopefully take care of this game nice and easy. And also remember, March 7th, we are reopening, and so we're making plans for that, and I hope to see you engage with us in March in that way. But until then, we'll be here on the live stream. So thanks for hanging out with us today. Hope to see you back next time, but until then, Godspeed.
Lord, I pray your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Today it's hard to believe in, when hell has never come quite so close. I see the whites of his eyes, and oh, I feel the breaking of every bone. What do I do now? It's gone. How many times have I promised to walk through this bitter drink, this awful cup, when all the pain's been swallowed up. Will it make us different? Will we say with confidence that the love was worth the risk, that the end is Lord, I pray your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Today it's hard to believe in, when hell has never come quite so close. I see the whites of his eyes and oh, I feel the breaking of